The future of late-night television is facing a reckoning as Paramount's new chief executive has come out in support of the company's decision to cancel The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The move, which stunned industry insiders and loyal viewers alike, is being framed not as a slight against Colbert's talent, but as a necessary adjustment to an evolving media landscape that executives say is leaving traditional late-night programming behind. The cancellation marks the end of one of the most watched programs in the genre, a show that for nearly a decade dominated ratings, and was often cited as the cultural counterweight to its rivals. Yet, according to Paramount's new leadership, the challenges facing Colbert are not unique to him but instead reflect a huge problem in late-night television overall. The executive, who assumed control earlier this summer after a turbulent leadership shakeup, did not mince words in describing the late-night format as structurally broken. Addressing stakeholders during a quarterly earnings call and later elaborating in interviews, he said the model that once drove advertising dollars, boosted network prestige, and nurtured political satire no longer works in today's viewing environment. What we've seen is a steady erosion of the traditional late-night audience, he said. Younger viewers are not tuning in at 11:30 p.m. anymore. They're consuming clips the next morning on YouTube or TikTok. They're watching podcasts or streaming original comedy instead. And advertisers know this. That's the underlying problem. Not Stephen Colbert, not his writing team, not even the competition. The entire late-night space has a huge structural challenge. The decision to pull the plug on The Late Show sent shockwaves through the industry. Colbert, who took over the program in 2015 after David Letterman's retirement, quickly established himself as a ratings powerhouse. His pointed monologues during the Trump presidency drew in millions of viewers and transformed the show into a nightly destination for political comedy. For several years, Colbert's program routinely topped Nielsen ratings, surpassing NBC's The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon and ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live. But executives say the ratings story is more complicated. While Colbert often led in total viewers, the demographic most coveted by advertisers, adults aged 18 to 49, was increasingly slipping away. Audience habits shifted dramatically in the post-pandemic years, with younger viewers migrating almost entirely to streaming platforms. Even older viewers, once dependable staples of late-night programming, became less consistent, often preferring on-demand content over fixed broadcast schedules. We looked at the data closely, the Paramount chief explained. The average viewer for late-night network shows is over 55 years old. That's not the audience most advertisers are paying premium rates to reach. You can't sustain a nightly, expensive broadcast production with that kind of demographic imbalance. The economics of late-night shows have also grown more difficult. Producing a nightly talk show with celebrity guests, comedy segments, and a large writing staff costs networks tens of millions of dollars annually. Once offset by robust advertising revenue, those costs have become harder to justify in an era when advertisers are redirecting budgets toward digital platforms and influencer partnerships. Insiders say Paramount's financial pressures played a major role in the decision. The company, like other legacy media conglomerates, is grappling with declining cable subscriptions, falling broadcast ratings, and the expensive push into streaming. Executives reportedly debated whether Colbert's program still justified its costs, particularly as Paramount Global undergoes significant restructuring. Ultimately, the new leadership concluded that continuing the show in its current form was unsustainable. Stephen is incredibly talented, and we're grateful for everything he's done, the CEO emphasized. But this isn't about personalities. It's about where audiences are going and whether a late-night show, 5 nights a week, still makes sense as a business. Right now it doesn't. Reaction from the entertainment industry has been swift. Many comedians and television veterans expressed dismay at the cancellation, seeing it as the latest blow to a tradition that dates back to Johnny Carson. For decades, late-night talk shows served as cultural touchstones, blending comedy, politics, and celebrity interviews in a format that became ingrained in American life. Losing Colbert on network TV is a huge loss, said one former late-night producer. He carried the torch from Letterman and gave people a reason to laugh, especially in some of the country's most tense moments. It's hard to imagine late night without him. Yet even among supporters, there is acknowledgement that the format's heyday may be over. Younger comedians are increasingly building careers on digital-first platforms like YouTube, Twitch, and podcast networks. Meanwhile, networks struggle to adapt the nightly talk show model to a world of fragmented attention spans and endless streaming options. The Paramount chief's blunt assessment of the huge problem facing late night has sparked broader discussion about what comes next. Some analysts believe networks may experiment with weekly formats, shifting late-night shows from nightly commitments to more cost-effective, event-style productions. Others suggest moving programs directly to streaming platforms, where segments can be tailored for on-demand viewing rather than rigid time slots. Indeed, the very way audiences consume Colbert's comedy underscores the problem. Studies show that millions more people saw his monologues online than on CBS each night. A single viral clip could rack up tens of millions of views, dwarfing the live broadcast ratings. But while those viral moments extended Colbert's cultural influence, they did not bring in equivalent advertising dollars for the network. That's the paradox, said a media analyst. Colbert was still hugely influential. But influence doesn't pay for studio costs unless you can monetize it properly. YouTube and TikTok are making the money from those clips, not CBS. The new Paramount leadership is framing the cancellation not as a retreat from comedy, but as an opportunity to rethink how the company invests in talent. Executives say they are exploring digital-first comedy projects, streaming exclusive specials, and partnerships with platforms where younger audiences are already engaged. Comedy is still vital, the CEO said. But the way it's delivered has to evolve. We're not going to stop working with people like Stephen Colbert. We're just not going to tie them to a nightly broadcast schedule that no longer makes sense. For Colbert himself, the future remains uncertain. Reports suggest he was initially caught off guard by the decision, though negotiations are ongoing about potential new projects with Paramount or other streaming platforms. Some insiders speculate he may transition to a weekly show, similar to John Oliver's Last Week Tonight, which has thrived on HBO by offering deep dives once a week rather than nightly monologues. Others believe Colbert may step back from the grind of nightly television altogether, focusing instead on producing or writing. Colbert has yet to make a detailed public statement beyond thanking fans and staff for their years of support. In a short message delivered at the end of what became his final broadcast, he acknowledged the changing landscape, but expressed pride in the show's legacy. "We've had an incredible run," he said. "And I hope we gave people a reason to laugh and think during some complicated years." The end of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert follows a trend that has seen other late-night programs struggle or disappear. In recent years, smaller cable shows hosted by Samantha Bee, Deezus and Mero, and others have been canceled as networks question the viability of the format. Even the surviving network giants, Fallon and Kimmel, are facing declining ratings and existential questions about their futures. Some cultural critics argue that the very concept of a unified national audience, gathered each night around a single comedic voice, is fading. In its place is a fractured ecosystem where audiences find humor tailored to their niche interests. While this may democratize comedy, it also diminishes the collective experience late night once provided. "It used to be that Johnny Carson or David Letterman set the agenda for the next morning's watercooler talk," said one critic. "Now the watercooler moment happens on Twitter or TikTok, and it might come from a stand-up comic you've never heard of. That's the world we live in now." The Paramount chief's candid comments signal that major networks may no longer see late night as an essential pillar of their schedules. Instead, they may shift resources toward streaming originals, sports rights, or other formats that offer clearer paths to profitability. For viewers who grew up with the ritual of tuning in at the end of the day, the loss of Colbert's show is bittersweet. It marks the closing of a chapter in television history, even as it acknowledges the realities of a media landscape that has moved on. As the dust settles, industry watchers will be closely monitoring whether other networks follow Paramount's lead. If Fallon or Kimmel were to face similar cuts in the coming years, it could signal the definitive end of the late-night era as Americans have known it for more than half a century. For now, the message from Paramount's new chief is clear. Late night has a huge problem, and solving it requires breaking away from tradition. Whether that solution leads to innovative new forms of comedy, or leaves a void in American television culture, remains to be seen.